Hi, everyone. Thank you and welcome back to Scott Week ScotCon. And I am very excited to introduce to you today a very special guest I have on with me, Chris Thomson, the head of the Scottish government here in the US. Chris, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for having me.
We are thrilled to have you. We're thrilled to have the support of the government. And I just want our viewers and people to know out there a little bit about yourself, if that's okay, but also your role that you're playing now here in Washington, D.C. as head of the Scottish government.
Thanks, Cindy. Well, I arrived in the US, arrived in DC in October 2021, having worked for a long time in Scotland across the justice sector, across the economic development sector, and came here with a view to help support the office and to develop all of the lovely stuff that's been happening over the last few years. And my predecessor, Joni Smith, who I know you worked very closely with, Cindy, had been doing. We work as part of the British Embassy, but we are reporting directly to the Scottish Government, which is an important distinction. Our responsibilities are around things like economic development, culture, higher education, research and development, and of course, what we're talking about today, our engagement with our wonderful North American diaspora.
Yes, and it's been a great pleasure to also work with yourself, Chris, and you're very enthusiastic and you're just on it. And I just want to say, commend you and thank you for just jumping right into the role and welcoming people like myself and a lot of the diaspora and other organizations. And you've been very present and very much a person that we can rely on. And thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you, Cindy. It's been an absolute pleasure already.
So tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about yourself. Everybody always likes to know, where did you grow up? Where did you come from? I know that, I'll let people know you did attend the University of Glasgow. Where did you grow up in Scotland?
So I grew up just outside Glasgow in South Lanarkshire, in a little town called Larkhall. I went to school locally in Hamilton, and then from there, I was one of 5 children, so from a big family in a slightly rural part of Scotland. I went to the University of Glasgow, and from there found myself working in various jobs before I joined the civil service and started working for the Scottish Government. I also trained as a teacher in between then and did a master's in sociology before I found my way into some jobs that I found hugely interesting and rewarding, serving the Scottish public, working in mental health originally, then in criminal justice and the prison sector, where I became an HR business partner and was responsible for trade union negotiations and pay for the entire Scottish prison sector before I moved into the Scottish Government, where I focused largely on regional and local economic development. So looking to support areas like Ayrshire, like Glasgow City region, the south of Scotland and Argyll and Bute, to develop growth deals to have huge capital injections into their economies to help build them and make them more resilient, and working on novel policies like community wealth building, where we try and make sure that small local communities manage to retain wealth within them rather than having them extracted. So stuff that I've found really, really important and things I think resonate with a lot of our diaspora here as well, about the importance of small business, the importance of community as well.
Yes, and I know that we're also working very closely with the Scottish Business Network with much of the same mindset and goals, supporting small business and entrepreneurship in Scotland and outside with the diaspora. Tell us a little bit about, I was reading a little bit about your work with the government's Clyde Mission Initiative. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and your accomplishments there?
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very close to my heart. It was the last piece of work I was involved with before I left Scotland. I grew up on and around the River Clyde. I fished in it, I swam in it, I fell in it sometimes after a drink. It's a river that runs from the south of Scotland through the west, through Glasgow and out to the west coast. And it's a very beautiful river with historic significance for Scotland for many reasons. One of our great landmarks is the Falls of the Clyde at Lanark. But if you go further down the river and through Glasgow, that's where all the ships that came out of Scotland were built for a long, long time. and a huge proportion of the ships sailing on the Atlantic at one point were built on the Clyde, and the name Clyde built became synonymous with quality engineering and shipbuilding, and that all came from Scotland and all came from the River Clyde. However, from the 1970s onwards, industrial decline hit that area, and we found that a lot of the shipyards closed and people were out of work. And whilst we had this huge, beautiful asset on our doorstep, it wasn't quite delivering what we thought it could, and it wasn't quite ready to do for Scotland what we thought it could possibly do. So I was asked with a team to work to make the Clyde an engine of sustainable and inclusive growth for the city, for the region, and for Scotland. And the words inclusive and sustainable were really key for us there. It wasn't about extracting from the river, it was about using the river to give back. It was about using the river, in some cases, to develop heating solutions for local communities. Because although everyone realises that Scotland isn't the warmest country in the world, you can actually extract heat from our rivers and lochs, and you can use them to power public heat networks. So we worked with people developing those plans and actually delivering the biggest heat pump in the UK in the Clyde at Greenock. We worked with people to develop vacant and derelict land, so land which had been unused for generations and been a blight on local communities. We worked with those communities and with businesses to turn it into productive land. We worked with cultural organisations as well to say that people from deprived backgrounds, from difficult backgrounds, can actually get involved in arts and culture in ways that they possibly didn't think they could before, and really engaged with them to try and make Clyde a more vibrant place. And I passed over to a great team back in Scotland who are continuing that work, and I keep a very close eye on it because, as I said, it's very, very close to my heart.
Well, very well done. I've always enjoyed traveling up and down the River Clyde. And for those viewers who are here with us in the Los Angeles area, just want to point out that the Queen Mary, which is parked in Long Beach, which we have enjoyed for many decades, wonderful Highland games that we used to have on board the Queen Mary. Hopefully they will come back, but the Queen Mary was actually built in the River Clyde as well. So just wanted to point that out, as many ships were built in that river. So very well done. I enjoyed reading about your work with that mission. And with that, now you're here in the US, based in Washington, DC. How are you enjoying your time in the US so far, albeit during the pandemic when you arrived?
Well, I've had a fantastic time, Cindy, and I've been really grateful for people like you who've been hugely welcoming, hugely supportive of me coming here and being you and having a bit to learn when I got here as well. I've come here with my wife and we've both settled very well. We love DC, probably not the summer weather, I've been warned, but we've traveled. We've been fortunate enough to travel, so we've been out in California when we met you in LA, and we had a lovely time in one of the most beautiful places in the world. I've been across to the Midwest, we've been up north, and getting about and finding out what America is really about, meeting Americans who are not only hugely patriotic Americans, but actually hugely patriotic about their Scottish history or their Scottish affiliations as well. And it's one of the things that I've been saying, and you'll have heard me say before, you can be Scottish by birth, as I obviously am. You can be Scottish by descent, as you are, but you can also be Scottish by affiliation with our values and what we want to do in the country, and everyone's welcome, whichever version of a Scot they want to be.
That's very well said. And of course you see, and as you travel around and attend some of the Highland Games, maybe this year, if you're able to, and you will see how many people from all cultures and all walks of life do come and enjoy all things about Scotland, the arts, the music, the food, the camaraderie, and the very rich history and culture. And I know that one of our objectives with Scot Week is to show a very modern Scottish culture and also help with the diaspora and business and commerce coming from Scotland. So with that, how has it been coming into the US in your role during the pandemic? What challenges have you faced, are you still facing, and maybe touch a little bit about on what you see for 2022 and moving forward as we come out of the pandemic? I know that was a lot in one.
No, that's a lot, but it's a great question, Cindy, and I think it's really important. And I think challenges of the pandemic have been false starts. We thought we were able to have in-person events and really meet people. And the ambassador here in DC has a brilliant phrase, which I'm going to steal from her. And she says, diplomacy is a contact sport. You're supposed to get out there and meet people. You're supposed to shake hands and talk and have interesting conversations. And that can be harder doing that virtually. And it's very hard to get out in touch with the massive Scottish communities out here in the States without actually getting on a plane or in a car and traveling, or on a train if we're being green, which we like to do. So it's been difficult to make sure that we get that connection and that contact. And it's something that I'm really looking to develop more in the coming year or so, hopefully as we come out of the pandemic and people can do more in person. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us. Obviously, one of the consequences of the pandemic has been that some of the activity that we've planned to do, it's been difficult for our partners to find sponsorships. So I'd encourage anyone who's able to support Scottish events, whether they're Scot Week, ScotCon, Tartan Week, to think about how you can support your local Scottish societies and Scottish events, because that's a huge way of maintaining those links that we've got between Scotland and the US. And what I think is important going forward for us is to continue to celebrate that and to focus on something that you said there, Cindy, which is about Scotland as a modern country. I said this to you, but it bears repeating. I am a Scottish stereotype. I wear tartan. I love tartan. I drink whiskey. I love whiskey. I play golf. I walk hills. I do all these things which are traditionally and typically Scottish. But I also come from a country which has got the best educated population in Europe, according to recent statistics. I come from a country which is developing a space program, which makes more small satellites than anywhere else in Europe, and which has some of the best advanced manufacturing in the world. And that's not always what people think about when they think of Scotland. They imagine, as brilliant as it is, Outlander or Braveheart, and we think of Scotland in the Jacobite times. And it's right that we celebrate that, but it's also right that we think about where we are now and where we can be going in the future, because Scotland is a small, modern, progressive and outward-facing nation. So I think in the next year or so, what I'd really like to do is continue to get that message out, really do more work with our university alumni here in the States. You might have seen last year that Scott, who graduated from my alma mater of Glasgow, was jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Now, that doesn't happen very often. We've got a disproportionate amount of Nobel laureates from Scotland, from our tiny country. I think we need to celebrate that and celebrate the modern side of Scotland, reaching out through things like our advanced manufacturing sector, our space sector, and our university sectors. That's going to be hugely important for us.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm so glad that you have this focus as well. You know, I absolutely love and adore Scotland, and being a bagpiper, and I'm being out in the Brigadoon of it all almost on a weekly basis. I also love to go to Scotland. I have seen very well pretty much every corner so far. I still find new things and new nooks and crannies, but I love seeing Scotland thrive and doing so well in the business sector. I know that there are a lot of engineers per capita coming from Scotland, perhaps more than from anywhere in the whole world. A very brilliant country. And of course, there's that book that was written, How Scotland Invented the Modern World. And this not too far off from being the truth of it, is it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, that was tongue in cheek, but there's definitely truth in it.
There's a lot of truth in it. And I really plan this year with Scot Week to be sort of boots on the ground, both here in the United States and in Scotland. We already have our trips planned to go over and really just, if you want to follow our YouTube channel, we really want to show this in a meaningful way. We want to show the different types of businesses and organizations, go kind of behind the scenes and watch some of the manufacturing and talk to people in the Scottish community, both, as I said, here in the United States and also in Scotland. So hopefully everyone will be able to follow us through that journey and really see firsthand through our eyes, if you cannot go and visit yourself, some of the work that's being done, which is truly fantastic and amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that myself, Cindy.
It would be great fun for me to do this as well. So hopefully we'll see you around the United States over the coming year and in some of the joint organizations and events that we'll be attending. and we'll be able to show our viewers a little bit more of us, not here on Zoom, but more out in the real world. So come follow us on this wonderful journey. And how can people follow your work and get involved and be supportive for you and for the Scottish government here?
That's a really good question, Cindy. So we've got a few social channels that we use to talk about what we do here in the US. We've got ScotGov USA on Twitter and a similar channel on LinkedIn that we are using. We're going to be creating a Facebook channel this year so that we can reach out to people directly on that as well. Looking at our socials, following us, and if there's something that you think is interesting that we want to know about, please, anyone can get in contact with us. We're more than happy to reach out to the different groups across the US and do as much as we can to support them.
Wonderful. And so how long will you be in your position? Do you as of yet know what your term is going to be here in the US?
We generally have a set rule of 3 years and then a discussion at the end of the 3 years as to how long we stay for another one, or you go back home at the end of that. Right now, I'm absolutely loving life in the US, but I will make no determinations because the person that will make that decision is my wife.
She's lovely. I absolutely adore her. So I just want to say, I know that it's always a team effort, and she is a wonderful person. So a shout out to her.
Yeah, very much a team effort and very much the brains of the operation.
Chris, it's a great pleasure having you on here. It's a great pleasure hearing from you. Hopefully we can check back in with you and for our viewers every few months as your time permits and allows. And we will see you around the country this year.
I'm looking forward to it, Cindy. Thanks very much again for having me.
Thank you for being here. Bye for now.
Bye.